Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker, and today I've got 24 deck lists for you. I know what you're thinking, that's a lot of deck lists, Baker. It certainly is. I've got 4 different events that we're going to be taking a look at, 2 of which are the side events that happened in Toronto, 2 very large side events, 142 players and 170 players. I said in my last video I was waiting in hope that more of the deck lists would surface on inkdex.com or just anywhere. I haven't been able to find any more, and Inkdex haven't been able to locate them either. So there are going to be some deck lists missing. From one of the event, we've got 3 of the top 8 deck lists, and the other one, we've got 5 of the list to look at. So we're still going to take a look at them. We're also going to take a look at a 41-player event that took place on the 24th, courtesy of Redfasa Games, which I believe we have all 8 lists. And there was also an event in London at the Brotherhood Games. Wasn't able to go along myself, but I know Spessy went and he streamed it. I was able to watch a lot of that. And this was 54 players, and there are 7 of the top 8 deck lists. So I didn't want to wait any longer for the side events that took place in Toronto last week. Plus, I know it's a big weekend of Lorcana. There's an event going on in Sweden. There's a huge event going on at Charlie's Collectible Show, and who knows what else. So we're going to crack straight on. A quick shout out to the channel sponsor, Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Cardmarket. But let's take a look at many deck lists. Alright, so we are going to bunch up the decks of the same ink colours, so we'll be bouncing between different events. And we're going to start off with some Blurple. In first place, we have Gavin. Now, I saw a Twitter post by Chad Clare, who's quite a well-known player in the community, talking all about this list and this player. Apparently, Gavin is 13 years old, very nearly made day 2 in the DLC itself. And I've seen an awful lot of players make their voices heard to really cheerlead Gavin, saying they really are something of a Lorcana prodigy, which is awesome to see. Again, this was a large event. This was 170 players or something like that. So a huge congratulations to Gavin. Clearly, the future of Lorcana is very bright, and they brought along some Blurple. So we've got all the draw and all of the ramp with some big bodies to hopefully get that. It's very mid-range, is Blurple. For our 1-drops, we've just got 4 Chernobyls and 3 Cogsworth. Cogsworth obviously enabling rush for characters can be really big to have good response turns. Elsa can obviously exert, and so can the big Elsa. So, you know, having this rush option is good, and obviously synergizes really well with our bounce package, which is 4 Fox, 4 Snake, 2 Goat, and 4 Rabbit. We're also seeing 2 copies of the Madam Elephant, which is going to be really good into those steel into opposing steel decks. We've got 4 Mickey as our primary ramp. We've also got 4 Tipo as another great ramp option. Obviously, this one being inkable, which is why a lot of players are prioritizing it over something like 1 jump ahead. For our mid bodies, obviously Elsa, the 5th Spirit I've already mentioned, with a great ability to exert, and rush and evasive is are good abilities to have. 2/5, I'm not mad about her stat line, but she can be impactful, and she enables us to play 3 copies of the Floodborn, a Spirit of Winter, who obviously is just a great board locker. She's really aggressive in her questing. She's got a brilliant stat line. Like I say quite often, I think 4 strength is kind of a preference a lot of the time over being anything higher, because there are specific removal cards that see play for characters with 1, 2, 3, and 5 strength. Obviously, that's without manipulating. You can use things like Ice Block and Keeda to get things into range, of course, but 4 is not a very relevant number. So it is a relevant number because it dodges most of the relevant removal stuff. So, and obviously 6 willpower keeping you outside of things like Zeus is super good. So love the Elsa. We've got 2 Kuzco to be nice answer to items. Your main target really is going to be getting rid of that lucky dime, so it can't be brought back, but also really good into locations, which I'm not going to say this deck should struggle with. Like, I mean, when you have access to Fox and Cogsworth, I think there are ways of doing it, but having this as a body that can do it, or answer the dime, or answer the maybe the opposing Fishbone if you're on the play. No, well, we're not running Fishbone ourselves. I got a bit carried away there, but just Kuzco, plenty of uses, and he's inkable. Couple of Hades for removal. Again, we're not really a control deck. I think we're mid-tempo. Hades is a good removal option. Obviously, it's funneling their ink well, but something's just got to go. We are running 2 copies of the big new Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock. On play, exert all your ink, and 2 random cards from your ink will get added to your hand. and then whenever he quests, you can ready all cards in your inkwell. So if we can get him down, obviously that's an immediate +2. You minus your ink count, but sometimes that's just going to be fine, and you've hopefully got more Mickeys and T-Pos to get you back there. But this is a huge body to put down, and then if you've got lots of cards and lots of moves you can make, then you can get a big turn off with Mufasa. I think Blurple is like probably the main deck for him, or Sapphire Steel. But my problem with Mufasa is like, okay, great, you quest with him and you re-ready your ink. Say you've got 8, 9, 10 ink because you're a ramp deck. Like, what have you done to use all that ink? And then when Mufasa quests, and you re-ready that ink, do you have more cards to, like, commit more? And even if you do you want to? Sometimes, sure. But this deck definitely benefiting from Mufasa. Just it's drawing well, and it's going to have that ramp. 4 friends for draw, 2 let it go to be some more removal, and then we're running 2 Queen's Castle and 4 copies of the library. I still prefer Queen's Castle. I do like the library in decks that are lower to the ground, which this is to a degree, and I think EA Tempo is definitely one that I prefer the library. I'd probably go for a 3-3 split here. I just think the Queen's Castle, I think the 2 lore matters that much. I think the clock it puts on the game is that much more intense. And the card draw can be much more passive. Like the library, the character having to be banished, like that is an achievable condition to me. Either like, especially if you're running Chernobyls, which you can obviously just quest and be banished. But you can quest and hope they challenge you, or you can challenge them, but that is still a condition. Whereas I just like with Queen's Castle, just being able to move a character there and say, just interact with this, or I'm going to draw cards. There's no more conditions I need to fill. So that's why I do still prefer the Queen's Castle. But this deck overall, look, I'm being super pedantic. I think this deck looks super good. Really nice counts of everything. And Gavin, as many players have said, clearly something of a Lorcana prodigy. So well done to them. And our other Blurple deck, courtesy of Travis, who came top 8 in the Red Saber Games event. A lot of similarities here. They are opting to play no copies of the 1-drop Cogsworth, but 2 copies of the 5-drop. Hey, I'm all for finding room for the 5-drop Cogsworth in this list, but I think, like, if you're running the 1-drop, like, I would struggle to use the 1-drop in Blurple and not want to put in the Grandfather Clock. I'm not saying it's correct, but I would just want to. But yeah, it does shock me to see the Grandfather Clock without the 1-drop in here. We're seeing the 3 Rafikis for a bit more board control. 2 Magicka Dispel as a nice answer to opposing You Have Forgotten Me. It doesn't help you, and A Whole New World and Sudden Chill isn't going to help you with things like Prince John's Mirror or challenging into Merfolks, things like that, but it can be a nice response card. We're seeing once again the 4 Elsa, 3 Floodborn. We're also seeing 1 copy of the Ana, 7-cost uninkable, 4/5 quest for 2. She is shift 4, although we have no shift target, and exceptional power. When you play this character, exert all opposing characters. I've seen a list similar to this before, and I say the same thing now I said then. I think I would just play the 4th Elsa. I think Elsa is just so much better in every way, without us having a good enough, and like there are shift targets you can play in both blue and purple, but I don't think they're good enough. I think I would rather just run 4/4 of the Elsa over the Ana myself. We are running 2 copies of the Ursula Sea Witch Queen. No shift target. I think myself, if I wanted to play the Sea Witch Queen, I would use that as an excuse to run the 2-drop with Challenger, the one that's similar to Chapter 1 Prince Eric, which I think is pretty good because I don't hate having the Sea Witch Queen in here. It can lock down a lot of decks. Other than that, most things are looking very much the same sort of bounce package. 3 copies of the Big Bad at Mufasa. No locations at all is questionable to me, but made top 8, 54 players. I think it was 54 players. So huge congratulations to Travis. All right, moving on to Ruby Sapphire. First of all, we've got Brandon. This was from the 142 player Toronto side, the 9 a.m. start. And yeah, Ruby Sapphire, a lot of the same tricks. Let's start off with the new toys. We're running 3 copies of Visions of the Future, 2-cost inkable. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, 1 into your hand, the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. I'm super high on Vision of the Future, and in my original review, like I think I was the highest on this among most reviews that I ended up seeing, and it didn't do anything for the first couple of weeks, but I'm seeing more players start to respect this card. I think it's super cheap. The 5-card dig, like, it's better than double Develop Your Brain. We're still seeing 3 copies of Develop Your Brain in here, which I think that for 3/3 split is perfectly fine. But yeah, the dig, this allows you to help you find your key pieces, which is normally the dime. Quite often could be the Kuzco if you need it, or the big Sisu. So yeah, I'm super high on the Visions of the Future. Just 2 copies copies of Brawl, I think is absolutely fine. We're on a 4-4 Sisu line, 4 copies of the Daring Visitor to pop 1-drops. Sorry, to pop characters with 1 strength or less. I'm running 3 ice blocks so we can get more characters into this range. And Sisu obviously banishing all characters of 2 strength or less. An ice block can help with that as well. Can also help with just the Brawl and the Medusa. So I think 2 is fine. 2 copies to be prepared. Again, I think it's perfectly fine because you've got such a big Sisu package, and the 3 ice block are going to help you get more and more characters into this range. So I think 2 is just fine. 2 Kuzco to remove things like dimes and locations. 4 copies of Tala here for draw. Running 4 T-Po. No 1 jump ahead. We're seeing the 4 Fishbone standard item package here, but the addition of 1 Ruby Chromacon, who we're just popping up here and there. 1 cost inkable item. You can exert chosen character gets +1 strength this turn, which can just fix your, like, if nothing else, Maui is now one-shotting the castle, and it can help with many interactions through challenges throughout the game. And at the end of the day, it's another 1 cost item. There's synergy with Flavisham, synergy with Tamatar, so I think it makes a lot of sense. So congratulations to Brandon. Also on Ruby Sapphire from the Red Saber Games event, our split finalist, first and second, decided to split. We have Shane, very similar looking list, also on the 2 copies of Be Prepared, 4 copies of Vision of the Future, no Develop Your Brain. Instead, we are playing 4 copies of 1 Jump Ahead, which some players don't see the need with T-Po, but the synergy is, like, on turn 3, you can sing 1 Jump Ahead with T-Po, so I think it's good. 3 copies of Ice Block. On top of the 4-4 Sisu line, we've got 1 copy of the Emboldened Warrior, which I really rate. It's another shift target, and I think she is so well statted. I really think she's one of the best 3-drops in the game. Everything else looking pretty much the same, so congratulations to them. Going on now to Emerald Steel. Now, this was the 8 AM Toronto side event, 178 players. And we have Ed, who was the champion of DLC Fort Worth. So no stranger to success. And again, 170 players. Big old field. This was super early in the meta. Like, this set 5 wasn't even legal for the main tournament at this point. It was just side events. So a great accomplishment. And yes, this is their version of Emerald Steel. They've got an emphasis on the cow. We've got Clarabelle Light on a Hoof, 7 cost inkable, 5/6 quest for 2, shift 5, and there are 2 shift targets. We have 4 copy of the 3-drop, who when you play her, if you've got less cards than your opponent, you can draw a card, and of course 4 copies of Morph, who can shift into any of our Floodborns. And yeah, this is how we're going to be replenishing our hand, very much proving herself, because if your opponent does anything that allows them to draw, you can just very safely empty your hand, and then either on turn 5 shift into the baby Clarabelle, and then immediately just draw up to them the same amount as them, and just help to keep tempo, or just overwhelm your opponent from how much tempo you've developed. Or even if they are able to take out the shift target, just doing this on 7, putting her down, and then immediately drawing the cards at the end of the turn. It's proving to be very good. We've got a 4-4 Robin Hood line. We've got a 4-4 Mother Gothel line. The 2 cost, when you play her, you can pay an additional 3 to bounce a character to their player's hand, so a built-in Mother Knows Best. And the 6-drop is a shift 4, 4/6. We've talked about how good that stat line can be, because not much hits 4 and 6 stays out of Zeus. Shift 2, and when you play this character, each opponent chooses one of their characters and returns that card to their hand. This can just be good tempo for anything, but it's also another card that answers things like Tamatoa, and just big bodies that just need to be removed immediately. We are running 4 copies of We Don't Talk About Bruno, which can hopefully help with that, and 4 Zeus, 4 Storm, 4 Raging Fire. If they're smaller bodies, we can deal with them. But things like Tamatoas, Mufasas, we really need to see Bruno or Gothel early, so it's going to help with that. 4 copies of Tragic Hero Beast for some draw, 4 copies of Kit for some more board tempo, 4 Peats to shut down our opponent's actions, and yeah, looking real good. It seems quite slow at first glance, but if you are just like playing your hand out as much as you can and then playing Clarabelle to just draw up, and like, again, it's kind of a similar vein to SteelSong in terms of it's just going to put out a lot of these smaller bodies, that some of which can shift into bigger bodies that quest for more, and then just replenishing your resources. So it seems like a very similar game plan. So yeah, looks good. Congratulations to Ed. Alright, let's move on to some Ruby Amethyst. There's a few of these. First of all, the other split finalist from the Red Saber Games, we have Sam. Now, for our 1-drops, the 4 Chernobog and the 4 Magic Broom, very set 4. We are seeing 4 copies of Kuzco in here, which I do think is becoming more and more important in the Ruby Amethyst matchup, especially because I think you're going to see a lot of mirrors, and Kuzco certainly, like, you shouldn't be playing Ruby Amethyst unless you think you can win the mirror match, really. And Kuzco just helps you build wider. Some players just don't even want to challenge it either, because you're immediately drawing a card, and normally, yes, they're surviving the challenge with Kuzco, but if you've got down something else, like if you've got access to a Fox or something, then you can just get the tempo back. So I super like Kuzco. 3 copies of Crab obviously synergizes really nice with him. We're not playing any Teeth. Most things looking pretty standard here. The whole bounce package, as I mentioned, 3 Crab, 4 copies of the Emboldened Warrior, and 1 of the Empowered Sibling in here, which I think is the standard for Ruby Amethyst these days. Just 1 copy of the Elsa 5th Spirit. Again, I'm not too high on this, but there's a lot of Ruby Amethyst players that I respect that are, and of course it can come in use, so fair enough. 3 copies of B Prep I think is fine with the 1 Sisu. I'm on 3 B Prep, but I'm on 2 Big Sisu, which is maybe too much. And then 4 Castle and 2 Library. Hey, if you want to play Library, then I think this is the right split. And hey, just having those extra 2 locations I think can be really good. Although if I'm going to do that, like myself, I feel like maybe there's an argument to swapping the Elsa for a Jim Hawkins. If I'm going to run 6 of these locations, I think there's an argument for that. The 4 Brawl obviously is no surprise, although I am going to take this time to put my hands up and say, as someone who was recently advocating for, like, I was asking the question, like, do we go down to a low amount of Brawl? We're not expecting to see as much Diablo and certain things. And then people were jamming Robin Hood, and then like Brawl can be just useful in other situations, just for like against Aerial and things like that, and obviously Flavisham. So I recently was like, no, we're back up to 4 Brawl, guys. It's just standard. I am going to admit, I have cut all 4 Brawl from my most recent Ruby Amethyst list. I've been finding the time to test recently. A lot of Tabletop Simulator. I have been finding some time to test, and not just with Ruby Amethyst. But I took someone's advice to cut the 4 Brawl. And I have preferred how the deck has been running. I'm running 1 copy of the 3-cost Daring Visitor, which can help you against the Flavishams and the Daisy Ducks. But yeah, like what I got told about Brawl, which is it's not that I didn't already know this, but it kind of was hammered into me. Like, there's never a good time to play Brawl, and if you're on the play, so you've already had your turn 3, and then they go Ursula, Seaver of All, or Aerial, or that's the turn that they put down Diablo without shifting. Then your turn 4, you have to Brawl, and it just feels bad because you just always would prefer the Rabbit or the Goat, or even just like developing a Sisu 3-drop if you didn't on 3. I still think there's a big argument for playing Brawl. I don't think it's wrong by any means. I'm just saying that my last few days of testing, I have cut the Brawls, and I'm liking how it feels. That's all I'm saying, but there's still every reason to run Brawl. Maybe I'll go back to it, but nonetheless, a great looking list. Congratulations to them. Next on the Ruby Amethyst, second place at the 142-player Toronto side event, we have Attack for 2, also no stranger to Lorcana success. We've covered them many times, and I've been able to listen to their wisdom in the past, so I thank them for that. But yeah, a very accomplished player, and I love this list. It's very similar to what I'm on at the moment, although obviously, as I just mentioned, I've moved away from Brawls. But we're seeing 4 1-3s, 3 mini, and 1 Olaf, just for preference. But yeah, I really like these at the moment. You get so much more synergy with your Crab. They're harder to remove. You can sometimes be punished by opposing Flynns in the mirror match, as I've found out recently. But yeah, I still like the 1-3s. 4 Rafiki I think is also good to have, especially because we're playing 1 copy of the talkative puppet Pinocchio, who I'm back on a 1 count of as well. I think it's super strong. I think anything that you would want to Brawl, with the exception of Diablo, which obviously is evasive, but anything that you would want to Brawl, a lot of the time Pinocchio would do if you're running Rafiki in the early game and you can offset the Aerial, or in certain matchups you will be able to immediately remove the Flavisham with Maui and Pinocchio. Again, you've got to be on 7 ink for that, so if they play it on curve, then you miss the chance. But if they have to play it a little later than that, then that can be an answer. Hey, there's still every reason to play Brawl, but the Pinocchio has felt super useful, kind of filling that role. Again, it doesn't do it as well as Brawl all the time, but sometimes it can do it better, especially because you'll rebounce this back to your hand. Everything else is looking pretty usual suspects. 4 at 1 of the Sisu line, standard bounce package. We're seeing those 4 Flynn. I think cutting the Flynn is ridiculous, by the way. I've seen some people cutting it. I think it just assures your matchup against so many slower decks. Ruby Sapphire, not assures it, that's the wrong way, that's the wrong word to use completely, but it just gives you a so much better matchup. And I tried moving down to 3, and I think I think I was wrong. I'm back on 4. I just really love Flynn still. He still feels really strong. Standard action package here, and songs. Actions are songs. 4 copies of Queen's Castle, looking real good. So congratulations to them. All right, next up on the Ruby Amethyst, we've got Jose from the Brotherhood Games event in London. They are rocking 4 Rafiki, 3 Olaf, and 2 copies of Cogsworth. I like the high amount of 1-drops. We've got 2 Pinocchio here, which obviously works really well with Rafiki and can work well with just Fox and your bigger beat sticks. But yeah, I'm really liking the Rafiki Pinocchio line. We've got those 4 Flynn, 2 copies of Crab, going to work really well with Olaf. And of course, you can give Challenger 3 to your own Crab and then play Cogsworth. If you've got at least 4 ink, then he can give himself Challenger 3 and immediately challenge for 6, which can be pretty cool. 4 Empowered Sibling, 4 Emboldened Warrior and 1 Empowered Sibling. We're seeing 1 copy of the 8-cost Elsa Spirit of Winter. I think personally, if I'm going to run her, then that is my reason to play the 5th Spirit. At least a couple of copies, but just 1 copy of the Floodborn here without a shift target. 3 copies of Brawl, 4 Be Prepared, 4 Queen's Castle. Yeah, obviously the Pinocchio and the Rafiki is like newer. We haven't seen Pinocchio much or Rafiki since set 3, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you're going to see a lot of Ruby Amethyst lists move over to this. Cogsworth is just player preference, and yeah, I like the Spirit of Winter, but if I'm going to play her personally, I'd find room for a couple of copies of the 5th Spirit, but list looks good. Congratulations to them. And our last Ruby Amethyst list, also from the Brotherhood Games event, we've got Scott. A lot of similarities here. We've got 4 copies of Chernobog's Followers, no Rafiki, no Pinocchio. We've got the 2 Cogsworth again, though, and 2 Minnie Mouse. Just 1 copy of Crab. I do think it's low. I think Crab's super good. We're seeing a 4-2 Sisu line, a 2-2 Ladies in Red split, 3 B Prep, which I think is fine with the 2 Empowered Sibling Sisu, 4 Castle, 4 Brawl, and we're seeing 2 copies of that Bee King Undisputed, which has dropped off a lot of Ruby Amethyst players' lists, opting to just play 1 or 2 copies of Tremaine instead to be your answer to, well, not answer, but can help you in the Blue Steel and Ruby Sapphire matchup. But Bee King Undisputed can still be super good. It makes you a bit more susceptible to Ursa Deceivers and Bare Necessities, but being able to sing this with your goats and your rabbits and your Mauis can be super, super good. So list looks good. Congratulations to Scott. All right, moving on to SteelSong. This was the 4th place list from one of our Toronto events. And yeah, SteelSong been looking super good throughout set 5 so far. It's only been a few weeks, but it's popping up a lot. We've got those 4 copies of Daisy Duck to be an extra aggressive Equester for the deck, and 2 copies of Piglet. So this is super aggro. We're not seeing any flutes, but we're still seeing 3 copies of Ursula Vanessa, which is just great to have down to know that you can very easily play Along Came Zeus, Strength of a Raging Fire, Let the Storm Rage On. 3 copies of Pete, which can just be game winning at the right point of the game if you've been able to go through like a couple of whole new worlds and just overwhelm the field, and then you can get a well-timed Pete to shut down the Grab Your Swords or the Be Prepared. Then that can be super good. There are ways that you could still be they can counter with things like Sisu. If they like, a lot of our characters are already in range of 2 strength or less, but obviously if they're paired with blue, they have Ice Block, and if it could be an Under the Sea variant from Emerald decks who also have things like Kida to get us into range. So there are ways out of it, but against certain decks, Pete is just going to lock in the victory. 4 copies of Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation to sing songs, and 2 copies of the Stout-Hearted Cinderella, which is just such an oppressive threat. Smee for stats, Ariel for singing and finding songs, 2 copies of Prince Naveen, who on play allows you to play a song of 6 cost or less, which again, you're immediately then establishing your Singer 6 for the next turn. Like, if you do this on curve, then it is the last thing you're doing with your turn. Like, you play Naveen, you sing a whole new world. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a whole new world, you could sing something else. But if you are playing Naveen on 4 and singing a whole new world, then your opponent gets to be the first person to make use of those 7 new cards, whereas really we want to be singing a whole new world with something like Robin Hood, and then knowing we've got all of our ink to play with to be the first person to start asking questions of the opponent. But Naveen can be, like, if that's all you've got, then that's still better than nothing, and again, you're establishing your Singer 6. But again, he can just be singing Grab Your Swords, Along Came Zeus, things like that. So Naveen finding his place in these decks. We've got 2 copies of World's Greatest Criminal Mind. No Queen line in here, which obviously makes this a lot more powerful, but there's already a lot of targets. Tamatoa, Maui, Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, people are jamming, Mufasas. I think there's another big one that I'm missing off the top of my head, but yeah, there's lots of options for this, and it's inkable. So yep, SteelSong looking real good, so congratulations congratulations to them. Also on SteelSong, we've got Gobi TCG from the Brotherhood Games event. Very similar looking list. They're not playing the World's Greatest Criminal Mind, but the rest of the song lineup looks pretty much the same. 2 Stout-Hearted, along with the 4 Borum Sensation Cinderella, 3 copies of Piglet, and those 4 Daisy as very aggressive questers, 2 Ursula Vanessa to sing our songs. We're seeing 4 copies of Prince Naveen, so a lot more emphasis on the power of Prince Naveen in this deck. But other than that, looking pretty much the same, so congratulations to them. Alright, moving on to some Amethyst Steel. In top 4 of the Red Saber Games event, we have Carlos. Amethyst Steel was performing very well in set 4 meta, and we see a lot of the same sort of tools. 3 Chernobog, no Magic Brooms in here, instead opting for 2 copies of Cogsworth, which again, turning on Rush for certain characters can be big. Great synergy with the Crab, also really good with the Tinkerbell as well. 4 copies of Captain Hook to be a great way of contesting the board. The bounce package is 3 Snake, 4 Fox, the 2 Crab I mentioned, 3 Goat, 4 Rabbit, and 2 copies of the Madam Mim Elephant. Really hard for steel decks to remove. 4 copies of Pete, which again, plays at the right time, that can just win you the game. Running 3 copies of the 5th Spirit Elsa and 2 copies of the Spirit of Winter. I'm so happy to see Elsa making her way back into to be a meta relevant card. Will it stick? Will she top 16 a DLC? Let me know down below if you believe in Elsa the Spirit of Winter. But yeah, 4 Tink, great mid-range board control card, and I think alongside Cogsworth makes a lot of sense. 2 copies of Simba, who on play you banish a location or item. We have no shift target, but this can be good for just answering dimes, opposing locations like castles. It tends to be castles. The Cove can be a thing. 2 copies of Fire the Cannons to get rid of to break shift lines, get rid of Diablos, things like that. 4 Friends, 2 Zeus, 3 Swords, and 4 Queen's Castle. Looking super good. A little bit more mid-range than some Amethyst Steel decks that we see that are a tad lower to the ground, but I think this looks really good, so congratulations to Carlos. And our other Amethyst Steel deck from Red Saber Games, in top 8 we have Christopher, who is running a Jafar variant. So Jafar Striking Illusionist, whenever you draw, while he's exerted, whenever you draw, you gain 1 lore. So we've got 4 copies of Whole New World to hopefully do that. We've got 4 copies of the Amethyst Chromacon, which is just exert, each player may draw a card. So this is just, as well as increasing your card count, this is just +1 lore if you've got an exerted Jafar on board. And again, if you do this before playing a Whole New World, then your opponent drawing doesn't even matter. We've got some removal options, Fire the Cannons, and 3 Zeus. A shift targets for our Jafar, running 4 Raw Vizier, who also has evasive on your turn, which can be useful for Diablos at the Cove even. 2 copies of the Keeper of Secrets, who's a 0/5 quest for 2 and gets an extra strength for each card in your hand. 2 copies of the Jafar Dreadnought. We are playing 4 copies of Blue Fairy, which I really rate. It's another way of us drawing cards, but if I'm playing the Blue Fairy, I think I'm just playing all 4 Dreadnought myself. The Keeper of Secrets can still be good. Like, I think maybe make room for both, there's an argument. But I think I personally would max out on the Dreadnought along with the Blue Fairy. We've got a 4/4 Robin Hood line and a 4/4 Archimedes line, the newest one being Shift 3, 1/4 Quest for 2, Evasive, and Challenger 3. And the Evasive and Challenger 3 can be useful, but he's here more than anything to be another character that can sing a whole new world. Hopefully we can sing 2 on a turn where we've got Jafar exerted and make huge leaps. And 2 copies of Magicka Dispel, again, to counter some of the discard variants. I'm not sure you need this, personally. Like, if you're playing a whole new world. Again, I'm very out of practice with Jafar, so full hands up, like, that is very much said without having played this deck for a long while. But just at a glance, I'm not sure how much you really need this Magicka Dispel if you're expecting to be recycling whole new worlds. You've got Friends here, you've got Blue Fairy here, you've got Chromacon here. I'd be interested to know how much work this put in, Christopher, if you're watching. But nonetheless, love to see Jafar doing well, making top 8. Congratulations to them. Next up, we've got some EA Tempo. Just win the game. Making top 4. The Brotherhood Games event. This is Teng, who I have met before. Very, very, very good player. I think we've played. I'm not sure. I've definitely watched them play, but high success rate at the Brotherhood Games for sure, and I think they've also been to Dark Sphere events. But nonetheless, I know them by reputation as a very good player. And yeah, EA Tempo, a deck that I know a lot of players are very keen to pick back up with the absence of Bucky, and I love the look of this list. We are putting some emphasis on the cow, 3 copies of the Floodborn, and our shift target. We're not playing the 3-drop, we're playing 4 copies of the 1-drop. Personally, I think if you're playing Clarabelle and you're not playing 4 copies of the 1-drop, I don't get it. I really don't. I think if you're playing both, cool. But I think you always max out on these Floor Clarabelle. They're super good. Items are very relevant right now, whether you're getting rid of the Fishbone Quill on curve or dimes. You sometimes see flutes. I think just like, and again, it's just a 1-drop, which can help fuel our bounce package. So I think this makes all the sense in the world. And we already talked about Clarabelle and how she can just get you insane draw turns. 2 copies of Queen's Castle and 1 library in here. This does seem low to me. This is absolutely the deck where I would be more inclined to go to like a 3 count of the library, but just 1 here and 2 Queen's Castle, 2 copies of Your Welcome, which is obviously so diverse, great removal for items, locations, or characters that we don't like. We can bounce our own characters if we want card draw, and there's also synergy with Clarabelle. Obviously, if our opponent starts to empty their hand to play around Clarabelle, then we can get rid of a threat, give them 2 cards, and then we're drawing even more of Clarabelle. Love to see it. We're running 4 copies of Lyle Tiberius Rock, one of my favourite cards in the game at the moment, along with Jark. Just Reckless. If you give Reckless, then you're one of my favourite cards in the game at the moment. Yo, do I start playing EA Tempo in set 5? What? What a thing that would be. Do I start playing EA Tempo? Just to run Lyle Tiberius Rock might be a good enough reason. Yeah, I think Reckless is super good at the moment. And that, like, again, a lot of Emerald decks that we're seeing recently, they are taking the excuse to run Lyle and or Jack. And even, like, if you look at the main event from Toronto, which, again, hands up, no set 5. But as soon as, like Jux and Lyle seem to be putting in so much work across that weekend. So I think the same is going to be true for set 5. You'd love to see it. 4 Shadowbox followers, a standard bounce package, 4 copies of Sahis to be really annoying, can just sit there and quest, and he can answer Diablo at Cove, etc. 3 copies of Crab, 3 copies of the 5th Spirit Elsa, and 3 of the Sea Witch Queen. I wonder if Sea Witch Queen is enough to, like, make our opponent exert their characters, which obviously Elsa can do. And yeah, she's evasive, but we've got Sahis for that. I'd be curious how much work 5th Spirit put in, or if just Ursula would have been enough. And even if the temptation is there to get a Spirit of Winter in this deck, maybe that's just too expensive. And, like, coming away from what is good about EA Tempo, that it's super early mid-range. 2 copies of Pegasus here, no Floodborn target, but can be just good, give everything else on your field evasive. In fact, that's another reason why I wonder how needed Elsa is. Just the exert on play is good, but I don't know. I really, really like the Ursula, but I suppose both is good. And then 1 copy of the new Anna, who on play, you pay 2 and you can choose one of these effects. Either your opponent chooses and discards a card, chosen character gets +1 strength, or you banish a chosen damaged character, and she even quests for 2. Looking super good. Congratulations to them. And our other EA Tempo deck, courtesy of Wildcard 58 from a Toronto side event. A lot of similarities here. We've got 3 Queen's Castle, no library. 2 You're Welcome. We've got that same lineup of Clarabelles, 4 of the 1-drop, 3 of the Floodborn. Also seeing 1 copy of the Emerald Chromacon, which has been... some people have been talking about this lately. 3-cost uninkable item. During opponent's turns, whenever one of your characters is banished, you may return chosen character to their player's hand. I do think this is maybe a bit of a sleeper and can be good, and I think against, like, Ruby Amethyst is going to hate this a lot of the time. They're not always going to hate it because they're going to make it so that the only thing that can be bounced back is their rabbit or their goat, but sometimes it's going to be annoying. It's another reason why I think anyone playing the cow should be maxing out on the 1-drop, because it can be annoying, but it is uninkable. But just 1 copy here, so seems fine. 3 copies of the Sea Witch Queen and 2 Elsa, so fair enough. Like, Wildcard as well saying that 2 is good. Both is good. 3 copies of Lyle, 2 copies of the new Anna, and then no copies of the Floodborn Pegasus, but we're seeing 3 copies of the 1-drop, 3 Chernobog's followers, standard bounce package. Yeah, the Emerald Chromacon, definitely a cool difference here, and I am surprised to not see the library in this deck, but looks very good. Congratulations to them. Alright, going on to our one and only Emerald Amber Under the Sea deck. This is the deck that's been very popular, and despite the fact that we're only looking at 1 from these 4 events, I still expect it to be a popular pick, especially as we move towards DLC, Birmingham, and Las Vegas. Under the Sea just being such a great board wipe, and there's so much synergy here. We've got 4 copies of Kida, who one player allows us to lower the strength of all characters on board by 3. Also 4 copies of the 1-drop, so we've got that as a shift line as well. So that on its own is going to get so many characters into Under the Sea range. We've got 3 copies of Painting the Roses Red that can also assist with that. 4 copies of the Muses here with Ward, and whenever you play a song, bounce a character with 2 strength or less, which synergizes really well Painting the Roses Red. We've got Bare Necessities and Sudden Chill, and You Have Forgotten Me, which is all discard. Synergizes nicely with our 4 copies of Prince John, so that we draw whenever our opponent discards. 2 copies of You're Welcome, just to be another answer to just like if we don't have the Under the Sea, or if it's just one character that's got to go, You're Welcome can do the job. Or the 4 copies of We Don't Talk About Bruno. We're running, of course, 4 Ursula the Deceiver to snipe songs, but also playing 2 copies of Eric's Bride, who is you shift by discarding a song, which we should have plenty of. 2 4 Quest for 2, and on Quest you get a built-in Bare Necessities. Those 2 Sir Hiss can sing a lot of these songs for us, and again, the evasive means he can just sit there for a while. We do have a 4/4 Diablo line and lots of actions that we can discard to put him down early. So if you don't have early answers to Diablo, then this deck is absolutely going to pop off. And even 2 copies of Hidden Cove to put Diablo there, put Ariel there, put Prince John there, and suddenly just completely mess up your opponent's maths for things like Grab Swords, Tinkerbell, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, looking like a super good variant of Emerald Amber. Congratulations to Nathan. Next up, our one and only Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro deck, courtesy of Harrison, who made top 8 at the Red Saber Games event. We've got 4 copies of the Library, which is pretty much our only draw. We're not playing Rabbits, we're not playing the Amethyst Chromacon, so putting a lot of emphasis on the Library, helping us to replenish our resources. But against slower decks, sometimes you're not even going to need it if you can just extend. We've got 4 Daisy, 4 Lilo, 4 Broom, 4 Maleficent Biding of Time, 4 Chernabog, so lots of odds to be able to play multiple characters between turns 1 and 4. We got Simba as a bodyguard, 4 Piglets, the quest for 3, 2 Wendy Darlings, a really nice stat line, 4 Snakes can keep our characters safe. We're running 2 copies of Arthur, who when he quests you can choose a character to return to your hand, and you gain 2 lore, which again, as well as gaining lore, is just keeping characters safe. 2 Donald to be a bodyguard that gives extra lore to characters. 3 Baloo, who immediately represents 2 lore. 2 copies of Fox, so we've got a little bit of board control. 4 Goat because he's the goat. 2 Befuddle to offset like the mirror, or just stop our opponents being able to answer the Daisy or the Lilo. 3 Bare Necessities to get rid of those Grab Swords and be prepared, and 4 copies of Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom to immediately gain 2 lore. Yeah, if you're not prepared for aggro, if you are too slow, this will just absolutely win the game. And we're not seeing tons of aggro so far in meta, but it's popping up a little bit. I think you could safely take aggro to a big event and choose your way to a top cut. So congratulations to Harrison. Next up, we have our one and only Sapphire Steel deck, and I do believe this is the first Sapphire Steel deck that I have covered on the channel since set 5. I have covered pretty much every event of at least 30 players. There are a couple that I've missed that were between sort of 15 and 25-ish. So it could be that there's some blue steel amongst them, but I haven't covered any so far, which is a bit of a surprise. This one piloted by Rob from the Toronto side events to top 8. Not a lot new going on here. The action item package looking pretty standard. 2 copies of Fire the Cannon. Some players like the Baboon, but you see the cannons just as much. 2 copies of Tamatoa, which just seems low to me. It feels like your win conditions so much of the time. But we are playing 3 copies of Bell, so that can be another way of doing it. 4 copies of Tink. We've got 2 Kuzco to remove those Queen's Castles and opposing dimes. Cogsworth and Flavisham. 3 copies of Pete, which again, for all decks that can utilize Pete, it can just be game winning if you play at the right time. 4 Smee for stats, and then we've got 4 Tipo to be our additional way of ramping, along with Fishbone Quill. No Mickeys, no 1 jump ahead, just Tipo and Fishbone Quill, and 3 copies of Captain Hook. Yeah, it looks like a super good build, and I'm just surprised that we've not seen more blue steel so far this meta, but it could be still to come. I think the DLCs in Birmingham and Las Vegas will be very telling, but nonetheless, congratulations to Rob. Alright, our final win combination, we have some Ruby, Amber, Mufasa, and we've got 3 separate lists to look at for Mufasa. My boy is putting in some work. In 3rd place here at the Toronto side events, we've got Vizroni, which I'm probably saying wrong. But yeah, Mufasa, when he's banished, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a character, you play it for free. It enters play exerted. So you don't normally see a lot of non-character cards alongside Mufasa. In this list, we're seeing 4 Brawl, 3 Teeth, and 3 Invited to the Ball. Invited to the Ball is a 2-cost uninkable action. Reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, put revealed character cards into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. I personally think this is too many. I don't think you need all of these. I think you either go Brawl or Teeth. And I think Invited to the Ball is okay. In some ways, though, I would want it to be my only action card. Personally, I don't think you need all of these. I definitely think there's an argument for either the Brawl or the Teeth. I'd be more inclined to go Brawl, personally, but this person finding room for 10 non-character cards. Hopefully we can hit some nice big bodies, though. We've got 2 copies of Maleficent, who banishes a character on play, 2 copies of the 8-cost uninkable Sisu. We've got 3 Surfer Stitch here, who when you play him, when you have 2 or more other characters on board, you can draw 2 cards. That's going to be one of our main draw engines, alongside the 4 copies of Rapunzel, who synergizes super well with the 4 copies of Mother Gothel that we're playing. We're not seeing any Mulan 1-drops here, which does surprise me, because if they just remove your Gothel and can like turn off your card draw, that can be really, really bad. So I do like the 1-drop Mulan in here. Instead opting for 4 copies of Pluto, who on Exert, you pay 1 less for the next character you play this turn, and 4 copies of Daisy Duck, who obviously has nice synergy with Teeth and Ambitions, 2 copies of Doc and 4 copies of Gaston. So a turn 3 Doc can represent a turn 4 5-drop, either Mufasa or Maui, or a turn 3 Gaston can enable a turn 4 6-drop, such as Madame Medusa. And hey, if you've also got Pluto on board, then that can enable even more. So yeah, for me, this is too many non-character cards, but other than that, looking like a super good deck. I'm a big fan of Mufasa. 4 Super Goof as well, just to be another way to end the game. And we're super mid-range anyway. Like, obviously, these bigger characters, more often than not, we're hoping to cheat them out with Mufasa. Maleficent Dragon ends up being Ink a lot of the time. And of course, we can shift our Sisu. I'd probably want to max out the Emboldened Warrior. Again, I just super love the Emboldened Warrior. But yeah, looks super good. Congratulations to them. Next up in top 4 of the Red Saber Games event, we've got Brian, who's running a lot of spice. We've got 4 of the 3-drop Gaston, no Doc, 4 Pluto, so that's our character reduction costs. We're running 3 copies of Gaston, who I really like just to be an answer to Daisy. She helps you stay out of range of things like Flynn Rider, helps you with just location math or big body math. So I like the 3 Arrogant Hunter Gaston. We are seeing 4 Mulan and the 4 Mother Gothel, which I really like, along with the 4 Rapunzel. 3 Surfer Stitch here to be another way of drawing. We're running 3 copies of the Emboldened Warrior and 2 copies of the Empowered Sibling, which I like at least more than just 2. 1 copy of Pongo, which can also be card draw. You pay 2 ink, look at the top card of your deck, and if it's a character card, you get to add it to your hand, and there are no non-character cards here whatsoever, so that will always be a hit, as will Mufasa. 2 Super Goof, again, out of nowhere, can end the game. Running 4 Maui, 3 Medusa, 3 copies of the Elite Archer Mulan, who can shift onto our 1-drop, and if you are able to catch your opponent off guard with this shift Mulan and do 5 damage to 3 different characters, that can be huge. Running 2 copies of the Heroic Outlaw Aladdin, who when you banish a character in a challenge, your opponent loses 2 lore and you gain 2 lore, a mainstay of chapter 1. No shift line here, but hey, if we hit this with Mufasa at the right time and they can't immediately remove it, then cool. 2 copies of Scar to be a way of clearing the board, 3 Maleficent, and then some spice. Running 2 copies of the new Maximus Team Champion, 6-cost inkable, 3/5 quest for 2. At the end of your turn, if you have any characters in play with 5 strength or more, you gain 2 lore. And if you have any in play with 10 strength or more, you gain 5 lore instead. I do not believe there are, well, other than the card we're going to look at in a moment, there's not a lot of ways of getting to 10. We can get to 5 quite easily. Maui gets us to 5, Aladdin, Scar, Sisu, Maleficent. That's a way of gaining the 2. But then, yes, we're running 3 copies of Donald Duck Pie Slinger. Shout out to Moyen. 5-cost inkable, 3/6, quest for 1, shift 4 is irrelevant, and then 2 abilities. Humble Pie, when you play this character, if you use shift, your opponent loses 2 lore. There is no shift targets, that ain't ever happening. And Raging Duck, while an opponent has 10 or more lore, this character gets +6 strength. So we can go up to 9, but we don't have support. We don't have anything, like not even the Ruby Chromacon to give +1 strength. That being the case, as fun as Maximus is, I'm not sure how much I rate him. If you're playing Maximus, I think, like, The only thing that really makes it worth it is if you are also playing ways to reasonably get to 10 at times. So that could be either Donald Duck along with anything that, like, if you've got a support character or the Ruby Chromicon, something like that. And obviously if you're running the Queen line, which can help Maui get into the right range, can get Scar get into the right range, and Maleficent. So I don't know how much the Maximus is worth it, but I absolutely rate it for the fun. And hey, Donald Duck Pie Slinger. People said he'd never make a top cut list, but here he is. I absolutely love it. I don't think those two are necessarily optimal. Other than that, I really like the list. And the Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, you don't see a lot, but it can be game changing. And that's kind of the style of Mufasa. You play just some of these bigger bodies and you kind of just say YOLO. So yeah, congratulations to Brian. And our final Amber Ruby Mufasa list, we have Monty from Brotherhood Games in London. They are running no Plutos, no Docs. We've just got 4 Gaston to be our character reduction character, which I think is more than reasonable. I think just 4 Gaston is fine. We are running the 4 Mulan, 4 Gothel to work with the 4 Rapunzel, 3 copies of the Floodborn Mulan here as well, so that line is open to us. Running 4 copies of Julieta Madrigal, who on play you removed up to 2 damage from a chosen character, and if you removed any damage this way, you draw a card. I'm surprised to have not seen her in the other 2 lists, to be honest. I think she's better than Pongo. I think she's just a nice extra bit of draw. 4 copies of the Surfer Stitch in here. We've got a 2-2 split of Ladies, 4 copies of Flynn. We've got 4 copies of the Emboldened Warrior and 2 Empowered Sibling. I think this is the right split, personally. 2 copies of Scar, 3 Maleficent. Our non-character cards of choice are 3 Brawl and 1 copy of Revive, which I'm not huge on, but I think 1 copy in Mufasa is perfectly reasonable. And then 2 copies of Wreck-It Ralph, Admiral Underpants, 7 cost uninkable, 6/7 quest for 2. And I've got the coolest friend. When you play this character, return a character from your discard to your hand. If that card is a princess character, gain 2 lore. So being able to, like, there's been times where this deck has just run Hades, just because being able to get back your Rapunzel at the right time, your Maui, there's plenty of things that board state dependent can be super important. But Wreck-It Ralph, the ability to be able to take either your Rapunzel or your Mulan. 11 targets here, I think, is perfectly reasonable, and that can just be game winning. And again, hitting this off of Mufasa seems super good. So yeah, this is probably my favourite of the Mufasa lists. Huge congratulations to Monty. And there we have it. I miscounted. There were 21 deck lists that we've covered, but still super wide range of ink combinations, so many things doing well. Nice to see some spice in some lists, and yeah, like, this meta just seems so healthy. I'm going to be very interested to see the results of the events over this weekend. As I mentioned at the beginning, Charlie's Collectible Show, there's an event in Sweden, and I dare say there's a couple more that will come to light. And yeah, we're drawing closer and closer to the DLCs in Birmingham and Las Vegas. Before then, I want to do like a deep dive into all the data we've got so far and try and come up with some specifics in terms of like what are the most represented ink combinations and then what are the most common counts of things. And I'm also planning another group podcast with some other content creators to come out before the next DLCs, which hopefully will be very exciting. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.